session to the soft and system side to sales, not stales, sales. And I hope
Easy for
everyone's
you to say.
well in this wonderful world, whether it's morning, evening, afternoon, or good night. I hope you're doing well. And today we're going to talk about another session on the future of sales leaders, Jason. That's right. And we're going to,
Yep.
what are the different skill sets that they need in this world going forward? And today we're going to talk about data and KPIs are really emerging. They've always been important, but they're even more important now than ever. Hello, Jason. Welcome again. And today we're going to talk about the data and KPIs. Jason, I've always been a proponent of good data all the way through. Everything I do is always based on data. It's part of the problem solving mindset that I've been growing up with in my career and that I was taught, but it was always in production environments. However, since I've started doing work in other areas like sales and marketing, and they haven't been very data savvy. And I think there's a few reasons for that, Jason. Number one is they've got these complicated CRM systems and they don't really know how to use them. They do the bare minimum, they put data in, follow up leads, and so forth. But these systems are so complicated that people don't really understand the best use or the most effective way to get things done and see what's happening and see what's working well. But going forward, Jason, things are getting tighter. You know, competition is getting tighter and tighter. Everybody's like their offerings, their professional offerings are getting better. And even now, as you know, with the latest chatbot GPT, everyone's wording is getting better and better now as well. So more important than ever is understanding data and KPI. So if I was to ask you a question, Jason, number one, what is your experience of companies in sales that use data and KPIs? That's the first question. The second question is, what do you think they need to change going forward?
Ooh, that's a complicated question because there's so many different facets within that question, and where to start. I think in the smaller business environment, it's a little bit more challenging because they're given the CRM, and a couple of years ago, I was working with a company. They were given the CRM, and they just didn't know where to start. They didn't know what to do. They didn't know how to segment. A rep from the company went over to them, and they had lots of conversations. But even so, they didn't get it right because it was so complex that I think the rep was giving them so many different variables. It was just very complicated. So I think simplicity is absolutely key. So you can really sort of know what it is within the parameters of your business and your business unit. You don't need all the bells and whistles sometimes. Some of the bells and whistles are just nice to have. Maybe just master the simplicity and the best practices which are in the industry, rather than going off at a tangent on other things that you don't need or don't need now anyway. So I would just keep it down to the vertical marketplace that you're looking for, which gives you an indication of who you're looking for as a business. Make sure you have the right data, who you're actually going to be prospecting with. Make sure that you can scrape the information out of all the social media channels, so you have the correct information of who is who and what is what. And that takes time and effort as well. So there's lots of different things in there that you can have. existing customers, their sales cycles, whether it's a short cycle, whether it's a long cycle, potential closing ratios, honest potential closing ratios. If you haven't just spoken to them, maybe they're not on the list. So you have to have those key performance places. So we've had the conversation, we've had the meeting, we've had something with them. Now put them in there, but don't make it like 50% if you've only ever had a discovery call, because it's not really up there yet. So a lot of these things need to be worked out as well, where you actually are within the stage of it. So I wish you hadn't asked me that question, because there's so many different variables in there. So,
but you're right, Jason. But like the one thing you said that's really important, and what I've seen from my experience as well, is simplicity of it. And when I go in and I ask, and this is not just for sales, by the way, but it's more important in sales, because sales that's the engine of the business, right? That's where you're going to keep moving forward, and business development, operations, everything. You need to keep the whole business going through sales. So that's why I believe sales is really important. But when I go in and look at their dashboards, I'll ask them, I'll literally go through everything and say, tell me what you do with this report.
Yep.
We don't do anything. Tell me what you do with this report. We don't do anything. So why do you report on it if you do nothing? The whole point of measuring something is so you can measure the effectiveness of how you're doing it. If it's a target, are you reaching it? If not, what do you have to do differently to achieve that target, right? But the problem is people just measure things because they've always done it, Jason. Yeah. What I like to do, number one, is I like to take them off. They're using a CRM system. I like to take them off that system for a short period of time. And it's not just for the dashboard side, but the whole lot. So how do you manage your leads? How do you bring them to the next step? How do you bring to the next step? But then once you understand, when you break your sales process down, Jason, like if you think of maybe there's 5 to 6 steps between lead generation, qualification, flushing, or like meetings, orders, whatever, if you break it down to those steps, if you reported, and again, this is about keeping it simple, Jason. If you said for every prospect, said, why did I not move to the next step? If you did that for every prospect at every stage of the funnel, imagine the data. If you just took one step of that funnel and you measured, well, what are all the different reasons why we didn't move forward here? Can we see any patterns? If we can, how do we remove that objection so we can move forward? And it's breaking it down. And this is what I like to call, like, I know you're familiar with Pareto. It's the 20%. You'll have an array of different reasons, but what's the top 3 reasons, the top 20% that are causing you not to move to the next step? And then what are you going to do about it? Because the whole point of measurement, Jason, is what are you going to do with it? If you're not doing something with measurement, why measure?
Yeah. And on top of that, it's for the salesperson, people, once you've made it the process simple, why are we going to be using this? What's the reasons behind that? What has to happen for that to happen? Lovely to hear from Cosmo on there. Lovely to hear
Cosmo.
Hope
you're doing well.
Yeah.
And living the dream.
And living the dream in Holland. The other thing I was thinking of is it's so imperative when you take people away is, why are you going to use this? It's important that you do put the data in. If you don't put the data in, why bother? Why use something that you can't have? Like, they're so sophisticated now that once you do put the data in, you can put it on your phone if you're out in the field, or if you're on within a call center or whatever. There's ways and means of doing things. As soon as you finish your meeting, you put the data in. So number one, you remember for the next time that you speak to someone.
Yeah.
Which is so imperative. It's so obvious. But it's a discipline that people have to make. If you don't put the data in, what's the point in having this wonderful CRM system, but then you don't get the outcome of what's been input into the system, and then there's no flow of information the most important people are the salespeople to review what they put in, know where they actually are. Also for the management. And also not only for the management, for the marketing department to use that data and analyze the data of who their clients actually are, why things are not working, how can we connect to the end buyers by using our marketing materials, or how can we attract those clients?
Yeah.
So lots of different areas around here.
That's a great example, Jason, right? And like you, I've had the same frustrations with some of the teams I've worked with that do not take accurate feedback or information and input it into their system straight after the meeting when it's fresh in their head. And I always like to say, what worked well? If the meeting went well, what worked well? What did they like hearing about the product? Then if it didn't go well, why did they not want to move forward, Jason, right? And then that is not just good information for the sales team, because if you did this for every meeting, if every sales rep did that for every meeting of every day of the week and every week of the month, imagine the amazing data that you could pull to show up what worked well, what didn't. And then just for the sales team, the management can say, look, guys, we want everybody to use this version of the message because that seems to be working well. That's number one. But as you rightly said, Jason, marketing. What are the marketing messages that they can take from that so they can build really good marketing campaigns that of messages that people, their cohort, target market want to hear?
It's a 360 view of the business. So the owner of the business needs to see how much money is potentially coming in, how much money has been signed, and where they are, so they can adjust the business case. So if they're looking for investment, or there's lots of different facets around this. It's where the money actually is. So obviously in sales, obviously repeat business. You put your existing customers in there, what their value is, maybe what their future value is, depending on what it is, whether it's a SaaS product or whether it's a one-off IT installation, and then whatever it might be, all the data and all the information has to be put in there. So salespeople need to put it in there. Accounts people need to be putting in for different areas. Obviously, maybe restricted from the salespeople, but it is a multifunctional piece of technology that everyone has to be used and analyzed for different facets of the business, because they're all going to be putting into this. But it has to be done with an element of trust for the salespeople to actually make sure it's accurate, 100% accurate. But it's probably down to the sales leaders to install a good culture around making it real, making it realistic, and having those boundaries around there. Not every week or every month you have your meetings and they say, yeah, we're going to do this, but back it up by where are you in the process?
Yeah, exactly, Jason. And there's a few things I just want to add to that great stuff you just said. Number one, the importance, going back to what you said earlier about the importance of inputting it real time. Because guess what happens, Jason? If you don't put it in real time, you'll just rush it at the end of the month. And then when you didn't hit targets, there's nothing you can do about it, right? It's after the fact. But when you do it real time, you can see over the course of each week, well, you know what? I'm slipping behind. What can I do? Who can help me? Can the team all work together to get everyone back on top of their targets? But if you leave it till after the fact, it's history. You can't do anything about it, Jason. And that's really, really important in sales to do that. The other thing, Jason, that I wanted to say was when you're dealing with, as you said earlier on, about the percentage of getting the sale, right? And for people to be honest, I can't tell you the amount of issues that I have seen with purchasing department and logistics department, making sure they have the material supply, if it's a product operation, to make sure that they have all the material supply secure so they can build the products and have them ready. But then those sales don't materialize and they're stuck with all this raw material that they can't do anything with. And it's an added huge substantial cost to the overhead of the business.
That's a really good point, actually, because it is, if you put the money in the CRM, you're expected the close will happen. And once the close, there's money in the system. So then they can buy the product or invest in better technology or do whatever they need to do to make the business run smoothly. But without all of the stuff at the front end, everything else will just get completely skewed, and the business operations, and it is a business operation, and it is everyone is connected to this system to make sure that we know that sales is one of the most important things for operational cost for the whole of the business. So that's just so important. It's just getting into that really good discipline and really good habit of doing the meeting, put the data in.
Yeah.
Even when you've signed the contract and even when you've got the client, is to put in other requirements in there. So goes off to another part of the business so they have all the correct information about what's going to be happening next in the organization. Obviously, the slightly larger organization will have 2 or 3 people working on the same account. The more complicated accounts, where there are 2 or 3 salespeople working on the bigger sale, that's even more important because we need to know the conversations that are actually happening between yourself and different departments of the business. So there's no crossover and we can all map it out. And the beauty of some of the systems that are out there, they will just map out the organization for you. So you can see who's who, and you can make sure that the conversations are targeted to the different types of people. But that's all incorporated within a CRM. But maybe it's the structure that once people get used to the basics and the foundations and then put the other layers in.
Exactly. And what I do, Jason, to that point, when I look at them, as we've said this before, CRM is supposed to be like a people process, like talking to people, 80% talking with potential clients or clients, right? Now it's a desktop exercise, people spending too much time at the computers filling in because they end up, sometimes they just don't know what is the right thing to fill in. And sometimes they fill in too much, sometimes they fill in too little, right? But the problem there is, Jason, because all these systems can do whatever you need them to do, you end up getting lost. And here's the other thing, Jason, like when you get lost, you forget the value or the purpose of the small, the 20% of that piece of software that will give you 80 to 90% of the results that you need. So I often take people off the systems and we build a very rough and ready Excel model. But once we do that, we find out what we need from a CRM system. And we build a little set of user requirements of all the different stages, from reporting, from activities and so forth, for lead generation and so forth. And then once we build those requirements, then we go back, does the system provide this for us? More than likely it will. And then it goes, well, if stick to these interfaces, don't go near anything else. Because what happens then, Jason, the other real danger, like we're talking about data KPIs. So the data analytics is like when you build your KPIs and those value adding reports, right? That should help you predict what you need to do next, because it's all about predictive modeling going forward, right? But it's important to really understand that word key. And so you have KPI, key. It's not EPI as in every, because if you're measuring everything, Jason, what are the 5 or 6 that are going to be key drivers in turning your business around? You don't know. And by the way, Jason, you don't really know them at the start either. The whole point is to go on a journey to learn what are the 5 to 6 KPIs that are really influential for our business. But it takes time. You don't just say, okay, here's our KPIs, they're done, let's do this every month and that's it. It's not. It's a journey to find out which ones are the drivers for your business. I see this mistake so many times, Jason.
I think once you do all of that, I think an idea for the business collectively, whether it's the marketing team or whoever does it, is just to create a simplistic cheat sheet of what you need to do and how you need to do that and how to set up your reminders. Once you have a meeting, set yourself a reminder of next steps, or you set up a reminder to after you've had the meeting, which should be in the CRM, is gives you a reminder to put in the data. So set all of those fields out, whether it sends you an email or whatever. I think a cheat sheet is a really good way to go, especially to get into that habit and into that process together that you're all doing it. Because salespeople, as we know, and I've been there many times, can be lazy because all they want to do is sell. They don't want to be stuck behind data systems and all of that. But I think nowadays, some of the best salespeople are the ones with the analytical minds, people that can actually read the data and use it for a tool, because it is a really good tool. Once you can analyze the data and be effective with the data, you can translate that into a narrative to help you sell more.
Yeah, exactly. It's all about building the journey ahead of you, Jason. And that's where data has a huge, valuable piece to play in this equation going forward, Jason, because everybody is getting more trained up, more better with their skills. So you really need to stand out from the crowd. And you can only do that. You can have that edge by using data and KPIs. So Jason, as always, we're up on our time for 20 minutes. If I was to ask you one question, what is the one thing that you think any company should do next after listening to this podcast?
Simplify your process. Make it really simple to understand.
Yeah, brilliant. I can't add any more. The only thing I would say to that is keep your KPIs key, 5 or 6. Spend time finding out which are the ones that are influential in your process and with your customers.
Awesome.
Great. Well, look, thanks again, everyone, for tuning in. And thanks, Jason, for your great input as always. And we'll see everyone again at the next session for the soft and system side to sales. Have a great day.